Welcome to Wizards of the Tower Roleplay, Campaign Tales, Episode 3. In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about the characters and what they've been doing in the first start of the adventure. Welcome to Wizards of the Tower Roleplay, Campaign Tales, Episode 3. In this episode, we're going to talk and introduce the characters for the adventure and talk a little bit of what happened to them after their very first outing as a group.
Yeah, after they returned to their home village on the coast. The home village's name is Wormvik, and it's sort of a Viking-esque village set in a fjord in the far north. And when they returned, the different things that happened to them and their adventures so far. But first, I think we should talk more about who's in the group.
Yeah, so I'll let Tom introduce his character first.
So my character is named Maud, and Maud is a female. Now, when we first got these characters formulated, Delaney had us pick them randomly, random by sex.
Gender,
sorry. That dates me when I say that. By gender, and then also by profession.
Right, and then traits that they might have.
Yeah.
What their backgrounds, how they were raised, and which would kind of help them dictate how they were creating their backgrounds.
Yes.
Now, first thing I explained to every one of my characters is, even though you might have picked a female character, you didn't have to play it as a female. You could make them gender non-conforming or transgendered or LGBT in any way, shape, or form. Because I believe in that.
Well, Delaney left that open. And so anybody who didn't feel completely comfortable playing, say, a male barbarian could play a female barbarian or a gender non-defined barbarian, whoever they wanted to play.
Yeah, how they wanted to present themselves.
Yeah. So my character, Maud Brewer's daughter, is the daughter of a mead maker. And is rather, athletic and kind of outgoing, and really kind of tough and hardworking. She's worked at the brewery her whole life. Her father makes mead, but he also brews ale, and dabbles in some, wine making too and stuff like that. And so she's worked at the brewery her whole life. She's rather tough and hard, and she's become really good with a bow. So for the 30 days that she has off, she makes herself a composite longbow. It takes a long time, but she learns it. She learns the craft and carves a composite longbow. And so that's what she does.
So we'll explain the 30 days here in just a little bit after we introduce the characters. And then I'll go ahead and explain some of the others. We have Rosari, who is played by our other female of our group, Kara.
Yeah.
And Rosari is a short... she's a barbarian, and her trait was she comes from a long line of berserkers or berserks.
Yeah, berserks.
And she will go off the cuff at any stressful moment. Not a typical barbarian rage, but she actually will go off the cuff and has to either start hitting a tree or biting on a shield, or she'll attack a party member because she's gone full on rage.
Yeah.
And she and her parents don't get along. Her father hasn't treated her very well, so she's very resentful. Mm-hmm. Kara didn't give me much of a background, but that's okay. I at least have that. And like I said, her character is very stressed and doesn't care much for her family, so she's kind of separated from them.
Yeah, and she gave us just enough to where we could work with the character in the group. So we didn't end up with a character who would be more likely to backstab us, or is all of a sudden reveals herself to be evil halfway through the campaign. Oh, by the way, I'm evil. That kind of stuff. So that didn't happen. So
right, and nobody was allowed to play evil. Chaotic neutral was the extreme that I told them they could be in this adventure. I know some people complain that they want to be able to play their own alignment, but you're a bunch of adventurers. You're working together, and you're not out to backstab each other.
Yeah.
Next character we had was Berger, Skull Talker.
Mm-hmm.
And Berger is their scout or rogue, per se.
Yeah.
He grew up in a family who were healers and the shaman, and his fate kind of dictated that he go a different path, which was rogue or thief or scout, as they're actually referred to in this society.
Yeah.
Not that stealing is looked down upon. That's a great way to become an outcast if you're stealing from the clan and from the people, because everybody is equal. And he had quite an in-depth background where he actually can make healing potions that aren't magical. They're made from herbs and other things that he can find, but he's got to have certain roles that we created within the game to do so.
Yeah.
And everyone chips in to help him try and make those potions, because in their very first adventure they had no healing, and he was basically their healer. Trying to make those healing potions or salves.
Yeah, I mean, we had no actual magical healer like a cleric, so it was very important that the whole team chip in to help Berger make his herbology checks and his brewing checks so that we could end up with some potions.
Yeah.
And to me, it just seemed like we lucked out. We really, because we didn't have an actual magical healer, we were able to make just enough potions to keep ourselves alive, and it was a real close thing.
Yeah. And Berger's played by Josh, who had never played Pathfinder before. He's somebody I played BattleTech with, and he played 5e and enjoyed 5e, and he wanted to experience Pathfinder, and I know he's really been enjoying Pathfinder as much or more so. It's a lot more in-depth to him, he said. There's a lot more in-depthness to us than what he's found with 5e.
Yeah, there's a lot more complexity in Pathfinder, with your character creation, story creation, so.
So Karnak is the dwarf of the group.
Yeah.
And his last name is Silvertongue. He came from a family of diplomats. So his charisma and his diplomacy are probably some of the highest within the group, because that's what his trait actually gave him, was a little bit higher on his diplomacy and things like that for him. I think even a little bit on his charisma. So he does a lot of the talking for the group, and he was, like I said, initially Kara's roommate, who had to drop out right after the adventure started. So Kara picked up the character, and it's been quite fun having him. And then Karnak has his NPC animal that he picked up, which was a dun bear. Now, dun bear in my realm, now it's not Dunbar like in Dances with Wolves, dun bear. Dun bears are like a grizzly bear, except for they're dun color and have spots and stripes, and they're very big and ferocious. And they came across a mother bear. If you remember one of the last episodes that we talked about, came across the mother bear with two cubs, and the mother bear was killed, and the two cubs were left. So they took the two cubs with them, and one of them, the little female cub, became Karnak's animal companion. And then we have our NPCs.
Yeah.
We have Frostwolf, and Frostwolf was a farm kid, and he's big and strong, and he's not real smart, but man, can he fight. He's willing to get right in there and start mixing it up with everybody, and he's got a heck of a sword that he found along the adventure.
Now, what's Frostwolf's strength? At
the start, I think his strength was 20 or 21.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And he's a 15-year-old kid, so he's 6'2". He's big. He's strong. He's not, like I said, he's not real smart. But he's fun, and
he's not an imbecile. He's just kind of simple.
Yeah.
But really strong, really hardworking. The main thing is, when you talk about strength in Pathfinder, a person who has above an 18th strength is considered to be really strong.
Right. And like I said, Frostwolf grew up on the farm and didn't really have much of an education, so he doesn't read, he doesn't write. He knows how to use an axe, he knows how to use a shield, and he's just a fun NPC. But he's gotten some problems that we'll get into.
We'll talk about those later on.
Next character we have was Rolf, who was an NPC. Now Rolf was Frostwolf, and the other character we'll explain weren't initially wrote into the adventure. We were hoping to have more people in our group, and I decided that they needed some other people to help them get through it. So
Yeah.
Frostwolf was added, and another character was added. Rolf was the only character that was actually wrote initially into the adventure. And Rolf is the son of Jarl. God, I can't even think of his name.
Well, he's a neighbor. He's a neighboring jarl from a neighboring
Yeah,
village.
he's a lower yanking
Yeah,
jarl. They
he's
have a
a
high
lower-
jarl which rules over their clan, and then they have
Yeah.
jarls which rule over the other
Yeah.
major settlements within the area. And he's the son of one of those jarls, and he's been kind of pampered and kind of raised.
Yeah. He's been raised differently.
He's
because-
highly educated
Yeah.
for the people. And part of his backstory is his brother, his older brother, who would have been the next lead, possibly, was killed by the Shadow Cat or
Yeah.
the Bear Cat,
Yeah.
the big huge cats that we talked about in one of our adventures that had come into the village and killed a bunch. And his brother was one of them, and Rolf remembers it. He was young at the time, and his brother was probably already done his test of manhood. So Rolf was a later child in life, and he's got a couple other siblings, but it was expected after his brother died that he would take the reins. Well, he didn't like that. He's tall, he's ungainly, nobody likes him, he's picked on, he doesn't want to, he just wants to study and make maps and learn things like that. And then our last character, which we added in, was Yrsa.
Yrsa.
And Yrsa is a cleric of the god Usei in my realm, and Usei is the god of sailors, water, weather, travel, journey.
Yeah.
So a lot of sailors worship Usei, who's a female goddess.
Yeah.
And she had been on a journey with her family to a far off island, and never got to do her test of adulthood. And she was actually the oldest person on the team at 18, and she came back and did her test. Yrsa's kind of the mother hen. She kind of looks after everybody. She's the only one that would really talk to Rolf when Rolf was having problems and everyone was picking on Rolf. She would say, look, back off, leave him alone. He's been pampered. So she's got this insight. And everybody in the adventure started off as a fighter-based class. So if you were a barbarian, you were still a barbarian. If you were a ranger or a hunter, you were a hunter. But everybody else, Berger, and Yrsa, Frostwolf, and Rolf all start off as a base fighter class. Yeah. And then later on, after the first adventure, they could take that and transpose it into either their first level of their character class that they had picked, or they could keep a fighter class, since everybody up north is very warlike and very warrior and strong. And of those, Maud kept her fighter because she was a fighter.
Yeah.
Rosari was a barbarian, so she stayed barbarian. Berger started off as a rogue or scout, or actually started off as a fighter, and then he transitioned to being a fighter, transitioned to being a rogue, and kind of their off again, on again healer.
Yeah.
Karnak, who was a hunter, stayed hunter. Frostwolf was a fighter. Rolf was a fighter, but he transitioned to becoming an oracle for the group. And there's things that have happened to him along the group. He becomes cold. He's cold all the time. He didn't have clothing and warm clothing, and Karnak gave him a blanket to try and help him survive. And he whined and complained the whole way. But when he comes back, he's always cold. He's been touched by something. And his skin actually is turning kind of bluish, like he's frozen. Even his hair is kind of changed in color, and he's dressed a lot different. And Yrsa kept her first level as a fighter and transitioned to being a cleric.
Now, keep in mind that most of these characters are all around the same age. They're all in mid to late teens.
Right. 15 was the youngest,
Yeah.
and 18 was the oldest. Next to the dwarf. Who
Karnak, of course, is a dwarf, so he's like 50 years old.
40, 50 years old, which is a young dwarf.
Which is a young dwarf. And then, of course, Yrsa is 2 or 3 years older than the rest of the group. And Delaney did that because she wanted to create an idea that they would have a coming-of-age story.
Right.
That they would transition from adolescence to adulthood. And of course, being this society is sort of a very difficult society to live in, essentially Dark Age, Vikingish,
Right. Not
Celtic,
everybody survives.
not everybody survives. Death is a constant companion. To live is a daily struggle for food, clothing, housing, whatever. It's a very class-based society where the Jarls, take a percentage of everybody's productivity, keep it, taxes for their own wealth, and everyone else just basically works as hard as you can. And you have class society where you have skilled laborers, like Maud's father, the brewer, or you have a ship owner like Yrsa's father,
right,
or family, and then you have Frostulf's family who are just basically farmers, but yet they're landowners, so they're sort of in that realm. We didn't actually add in any characters who, with the exception of maybe Rosari, who being a barbarian, was probably a landless barbarian, just a fighter, a warrior.
Yeah.
So a traveling itinerant fighter. So we tried to represent the gamut of various types of people living in different socioeconomic classes from this time period, and then throw them together in this pot to see, how well they would kind of gel into this stew of a team, of a functioning fighting team, and a lot of times that's what Pathfinder's about, is taking all these different people together, throwing them into
any
a pot.
tabletop RPG in general.
It is, but Pathfinder works better that way because you can have such a variety of characters. You know what I mean? Is you can create a variety of characters and then put them together with all these different characteristics and see how well they work together as a group.
Now, when they returned, they had a little bit of treasure, and the whole agreement was they had to, anything that they brought back, was half of it went to the Jarl at the Jarl's discretion of what he wanted.
Yeah, he would take it all. If anybody remembers, this is kind of a throw out there. If anybody remembers the first season of Vikings, when Travis Fimmel and his group first come back from England, they dump all the loot on the floor, and the Jarl looks down at it and he says, "Well, look what you've brought. Of course, all of this belongs to me now, because you work for me. You're under my dominion. But I'll let you all keep one thing." And so each person runs up and grabs like a ring or a pot, and of course, Ragnar, what he does is he keeps the slave.
Right.
He keeps the priest that he's taken.
Right,
Athelstan.
He knows how much value that character has.
Exactly, and it's kind of the same in this society. The Jarl says, "Well, half of this belongs to me. I'm going to take basically everything, all your horses, all your skins, everything, all your trophies, everything else, but I'll leave everybody one thing." And so Maud gets to keep her +1 leather armor that she took, but everybody else gets different little things. Like Frostulf keeps Hilari, the sword.
Right, Hilari is it's basically a legacy, or some might call it an artifact sword. It's been around for a long time, and it's got a lot of great powers to it. It actually will heal Frostwolf I think it's 1d8 plus, like a cleric in many ways. But to use it, he actually had to have killed something.
Yeah.
And it's got other abilities that he's finding out as he goes, and it gains incrementally as his skill increases. The sword starts increasing with him.
Yeah. It levels with him. Like sentient swords in the books sometimes do that.
Right.
They have a high-level sword, but as they're bonded to a person,
right,
as that person levels, that sword will level in abilities along with that person.
Now, Hilari is actually a real word from the Scandinavian country, meaning healer.
Because it heals. It's a sword that
actually heals.
Yeah, heals the user.
Right. Now, there were other things that they got, which was a Helm of Clairvoyance, a +1 armband, a +1 elven dagger. Now, these people are actually enemies of the elves to the south of them, and that's considered a nice piece of trophy.
Yeah, it is.
And then, of course, there was one of the bears. There were 2 bear cubs, and the Jarl kept one and let the dwarf keep the other one.
Yeah, Karnak took the other one, which he named Sophie, the female, and raised that bear, as an animal companion. Which that's sort of the rangerish part of the hunter. That they can have an animal companion travel along with them. And work with them.
Well, it's a ranger druid is what it is.
Ranger druid, yeah.
And druids have that too.
They have that animal companion ability.
Once they meet up with the High Jarl, they also meet up with the shaman of the village, whose name was Eagle Skull Speaker. And Eagle basically sees things or tells them what they've seen and translates it out into their dreams. And he makes them drink this foul brew, kind of similar to what they had to drink earlier, which puts them into a dream state, and they see things.
Yeah.
And basically some of their visions are falling from the sky and things like that.
Yeah, and we tell him of, our characters tell him of their encounter with Invernia.
Now, Invernia is the goddess of winter. There are
Yeah.
the four goddesses of the seasons, and Invernia is the goddess of winter. She is actually the daughter of the god of death. But the god of death in my realm is not necessarily evil, and Invernia is not evil. She is considered neutral.
Yeah.
And part of the whole adventure is when she told the party that winter is coming, not like George R.R. Martin, but it's an everlasting winter.
Yeah.
And her name is associated to it because she is the goddess of winter, so people are blaming her. And
Yeah.
the gods in my realm actually can't make a direct... they can't directly do anything with the mortals. They can kind of push them into a path, but they can't really assist them directly. So if there's something mortal that's going on, the mortals are doing, she can't interfere with that, or neither can any of the other gods. All they can do is push the mortals in the path, kind of like the Greek gods might have done, or even the Norse gods might have done at the time. Push you onto a path and say, hey, go do this for me, and earn by favor. So in some respects, it's a geas that she puts on them, or a quest that she puts on the party.
Yeah, the gods can't, and the goddesses can't do anything more than intercede on behalf of a person, say a cleric, provide them with some kind of insight or something depending on the spell they cast. But once a pathway has been created by some sorts of events, the gods and the goddesses can't derail that sort of pathway. They can't derail the fate of a group of people or of a people. Now that fate has to work itself out,
Right.
and that's how you get these journeys and these quests, that the gods can look back at or look down on and say, well, here they go along with their quest, but I can't throw a giant roadblock in front of them and block them. That kind of intercession just can't be done. The whole idea is that the quest has to work itself out.
Right. And what may happen,
Yeah.
or will happen.
Yeah. So during the 30 days that they're doing different stuff, like I said, Maud makes her bow.
Well, let's kind of explain that. So right after the adventure, and they had everything, I gave the characters a 30-day downtime in the adventure of what's happening in their lives. What are you doing during these 30 days? As winter is getting worse and worse and worse, that winter has not broke into the spring. Spring is technically here, but the weather hasn't gotten nice, and people can't grow anything, and the mead maker can't make his mead because his bees aren't producing honey like they should be.
Yeah.
They're probably making a little bit, but not like they should.
Not enough.
And Frostwolf, who's a farmer, he can't go farm. So what does Frostwolf do? He goes home and he cuts lumber because that's the nearest thing that he can do.
Yep.
And he's probably done that as a farmer, clearing land.
Yeah.
Rosari just pretty much avoids her father and practices with her sword and drinks and has a regular time. Rolf changes. Rolf has had this connection with this deity, Invernia, and as I said, his skin is now blue and his hair is kind of white, which is kind of a sign of Invernia.
Yeah.
And he's become an oracle. But along with that, because he didn't do some things along at the start of the adventure, he has become an outcast to the society. They won't drive him out, but they won't let him starve, but he doesn't get a good house, he can't live with his family anymore, he can't show his face. So Rolf, when they see him next, he's got these deer antler horns, and his face is covered up. You can't see his eyes. Anybody who knows the band Heilung, and we'll put a picture up
Yep.
of Maria Franz of Heilung, who he kind of resembles in some respects. How his skin is lighter colored, and how he wears dark makeup, and
Yeah.
his eyes are covered. He has slits in the leather so he can see out, but people can't see into him very well.
Yeah.
And he walks along with his spear, and he's kind of hunched over, and he's always cold. He can't get warm. He gets as close to the fire he can. He's bundled up in furs, and he just can't get cold or warm. And they find out something has happened to him. And then Yrsa she can't really sail with her family, so she has been kind of working around the ships and learning more about Usei and becoming a cleric of Usei, and Berger, who's been working with his family, who are healers and shaman, has learned more about healing
In herbology.
to help to help his family, but to help the clan and help his friends if need be.
Mm-hmm. So during this time period, though, everybody in our group has been having these dreams.
Right.
And we've been having the same dreams. Traveling to a distant land, seeing a hilltop with standing stones upon the hilltop, seeing figures digging into the hill, revealing chambers beneath the hill, all of it overlooked by a very fine-looking, beautiful, very, very coldish, sort of fair-looking woman who has two large ravens, one black raven, one white raven, and also two wolves as
one
companions.
gray and one black.
And then one gray wolf and one black wolf. And then this person seems to be overseeing the activity upon the standing stone mounds. And we get an overwhelming urge as a group to travel to these mounds, to travel south to these mounds and investigate them. And that's a communal dream that everyone in our group has. So at the end of 30 days, we all kind of pass the words around amongst each other. We're going to meet at the Jarl's Mead Hall, and we're going to discuss what's happened to us.
Well, you didn't actually discuss, you all had this urge to meet back at the Jarl's Mead Hall.
Right.
It was this urge that they all had that, hey, I need to go there and maybe talk to the High Jarl and maybe meet up with some of my friends who were there. And it just so happens that all of them, even though they're scattered throughout the clan, throughout the lands, show up all at about the same time.
Yeah, I guess so. So they all show up at the same time, and they get to see each other. However, each one of them has changed over in the past few days or past few weeks, and that's when we first spy Rolf, and we see how the change that has come over him, and it's of course it's rather shocking.
I go and give him a hug, and he's freezing cold and does cold damage to him.
Yeah, if you actually touch him and hug him or touch him in a way, he does non-lethal cold damage to you.
Oh, it's lethal.
Is it lethal?
Yeah, it's lethal.
Well, he does lethal.
He doesn't mean to.
Yeah, he does lethal cold damage to you. It's just what emanates off his body. It's his aura. And so everybody learns very quickly not to touch him.
So with that, I think we're going to end Campaign Tales 3. And we'll meet back up here in the next episode with our characters and where they go and what they do.
What they decide to do and where their adventure takes them.
So with that, we hope all your adventures are epic and keep on role-playing.
Thanks, folks.